Today we're covering a question I get asked all the time, and it's how to properly price a cake. So this can be a little bit tricky, and I know when I first started baking, I had no idea how much to charge for a cake. I would literally compare my cake prices to that of a grocery store. So today we're going to walk through a really basic formula that I like to use to figure out what price your cake should be at, and also to value your time. So the whole goal of this is to help you recognize the value of your time, to empower you to charge the right price for your customers and where you live, and also to make sure you're consistently making a profit on your cakes because you're putting so much time into them. You want to make sure that it's worth your while. So my equation for pricing a cake is really simple. It's the cost of your ingredients. So that's all the flour, the sugar, and the butter that you're using to actually bake the cake. Your time, which is also really valuable, and I calculate that by taking the estimated time that you think a cake is going to take times your hourly rate, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then also your indirect costs. So any big purchases that you buy for your baking business, whether it's a KitchenAid or new pans or even a new oven, all of that should be factored into the price that you charge for each cake. So we're going to break this down and go into the details of each of these parts of the equation so that you know how to properly price your cakes. To tackle the first part of our formula, we have our ingredients. And I know it seems really simple, right? Like the cost of your ingredients shouldn't be so crazy to figure out. But when you're making different cake recipes in different volumes, say you're making a tiered cake or a small batch, you need to be able to quickly and easily calculate how much it actually costs you to make each of those items. So what I actually like to do, this might be my inner accountant showing, but I actually have a spreadsheet that breaks down each ingredient that I use for my recipes, the standard quantity it comes in, so whether you're using, a stick of butter, which is a half cup, or a teaspoon of baking powder. So it breaks it down like that, and then I actually calculate the price of the ingredient in that quantity. So I scour my grocery receipts, figure out how much each item costs, and then how many teaspoons of baking powder are in a can, or how many cups of sugar are in a bag. And then that way you know how much every unit of ingredient costs, and you can easily link up that master ingredient sheet to all of your different recipes. So I'm not gonna lie, this is definitely a little bit of a time investment, but once you've done it one time, it lasts for forever, and it really helps you know how much you're actually spending on everything that you make. So here's actually my pricing sheet from 2014, way back in the day. You can see it is very detailed, but it's so precise, so accurate, and so easy to use once you make it. Highly recommend making something like that that works for your most popular recipes so that you know in an instant how much an order is going to cost you. So now that we figured out that section, the next is your time. So you guys spend hours making gorgeous custom cakes, right? That time matters. You can't just pretend like you're only going to charge for the cost of the ingredients. You need to be charging your hourly rate, which can vary from person to person and where you live, times the estimated amount of time a cake will take. So if you know to make a buttercream cake actively it only takes you maybe 2 hours, you can factor that into the equation and then you can charge your hourly rate. So if you're new to baking, maybe you don't want to charge quite as much for your time because you still feel like you're learning, or if you're super advanced and you can make beautiful sugar paste flours or elaborate cake toppers, then maybe you charge a bit more. But you really should be charging at least minimum wage for your time, because if you worked in a bakery, that's how much they pay you, and you're worth that much. So be sure that you are factoring your time because it is worth something. The last part of the equation is our indirect costs. So like I mentioned earlier, it could be a KitchenAid, it could be some new kitchen pans, it could be some new baking pans that you got, everything that goes into making a cake. That could include electricity, rent if you're renting out a space, and even cake boxes and cake rounds. All of those things, while they might seem insignificant, can really add up over time. I know I spend, $100 for a big box of cake boxes, and they're not free, so you need to add that into the cost of each of your cakes that you sell. So once you factor all of that in, your cake price might be higher than what you're charging right now, and you might be shocked, right? I know that so many of us tend to undervalue what we're making, but you have to remember that you are making a custom cake. It is a work of art. You're making special flavors, special decorations. These are things that somebody cannot get at the grocery store. And also, the clientele that you're going after are the people that are ordering a custom cake months in advance for a special birthday or a special occasion, and they're willing to pay more for that customization. On the other hand, your client is not somebody who's running to Walmart at the last minute to buy a sheet cake. Also, sheet cakes or cakes that are made at the grocery store are usually made in bulk. They're usually made with lower quality ingredients, and they're done by the masses. They're not something unique. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to price out your own cake. And don't be scared or don't get sticker shock when you use this formula, and see how much you should be charging for your cakes. I know I underpriced my cakes for years, like I mentioned before. And I had friends and even customers tell me that I needed to charge more, which is actually pretty embarrassing in hindsight. But your prices should actually be high enough where some people tell you that you're too expensive. I know that sounds terrible and you never want to lose an order, but if nobody is telling you that your prices are too high, it means they're probably too low. So just keep that in mind too when you are setting your prices. While this formula is great from a high level, it can vary a bit based on where you live. So I live here in Manhattan, where people are willing to pay a lot for a custom cake, whereas some other parts of the country you might have to charge a little bit less. So if you're really not sure of where you should be at in terms of price, you can always reach out to other local bakers. They can be a great source of knowledge, and they can really help you understand what the market price is for the types of cakes that you make. With that being said, you never want to undercut other bakers. It can devalue custom cakes in your area, and you're also going to attract clientele that you probably don't want to be long-term customers. You're going to get the people that threaten other bakers and say that they know somebody who can make a cake for less, and it just is a downward spiral that also is going to lead to you making less money for all of your hard work. One other thing about pricing and all the custom cakes you make is to be confident in your style. When I was first starting baking, I hadn't really found my style yet, and I looked at other bakers kind of as competition. And that is also what made it hard for me with pricing, because I was too scared to charge a lot. I thought I'd lose cake orders, and I was just worried about that. But I think as you go along in your cake journey, you're going to really find your style, and you'll feel more confident charging more for your cakes and not worrying if you lose a cake order or two, because all the other cake artists out there are different than you. They have their own styles, their own things they specialize in, and you're not competing against each other. You're making two totally different products. I really love to make colorful buttercream cakes. That is my very favorite thing, and I don't work much with fondant. So when I would get an order for a fondant cake, I would say, like, thank you so much for reaching out. I don't really work with fondant much, but my friend so-and-so is amazing at it. I really recommend you reach out to them. And I found that the more people that I referred to my other baking friends, it came back tenfold. It's really just a way to make sure that you're staying true to your style and you're making cakes that make you happy and your customers happy. So don't be afraid to spread the love. It always comes back to you. Another topic I want to touch on is pickup and delivery. I am so embarrassed to say this, but when I first started selling cakes, I didn't charge for cake deliveries. I usually would deliver cakes on foot within a 2-mile radius of my apartment, which is crazy. But so I was just so happy to be making cakes for people. I didn't want to charge extra money for this, but it can take a lot of time to deliver cakes, and especially if you have to drive somewhere, the wear and tear on your car, your gas, and all of that adds up really quickly. So be sure that you're charging a decent fee for delivery. And if you're charging a fair rate for delivery, sometimes it will encourage people to come pick cakes up, which can make life easier in some situations. The final topic I want to touch on is making cakes for family and friends. This can be really touchy, and I know a lot of bakers out there that have gotten themselves in sticky situations. So what I recommend doing is just setting a ground rule up front. So whether you make cakes for friends and family for free, or you only make free cakes for your immediate family, or for your friends and uncles and aunts, you decide to just charge them for cost of goods. Make that statement up front so everybody knows that that's the expectation and that there won't be any confusion down the road. So that is it. Those are all of my thoughts on how to price a cake. I hope that all of this empowers you to price your cakes for what they're worth. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you guys again soon. See you later.